Evening, you're watching The Buck Stops Here and I'm Barkha Dutt. The big newsmaker coming up tonight at 9:30 is Union Minister Piyush Goyal, and he's hitting back at former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram's critique of the coal auctions. Mr. Chidambaram, of course, has argued that there remains a fog around when and how money will be delivered from these auctions. Piyush Goyal, coming up at 9:30, is saying he's amazed at what he calls the ignorance of P. Chidambaram. There have been questions raised by the opposition, for example, the former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram, who's asking you a basic question. He's saying, who is paying these humongous amounts to the central and state governments? Will the cost eventually have to be borne by the consumer, suggesting that eventually these companies who are bidding will have to go to the bank for loans?
I'm amazed at the ignorance of the former Finance Minister. I think the auctions were absolutely loud and clear in their intention to actually reduce power tariffs.
That's coming up at 9:30. But our top story on the Buck Stops Here tonight, the Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan has said no yet again to including eggs even for a pilot project in 3 tribal districts of Madhya Pradesh for the anganwadis. These are, of course, the poorest, the most economically backward children. The officials close to the Chief Minister have argued that the vegetarian Chief Minister has always had a strong sentiment on this issue. Child rights activists have also made the point that the Chief Minister has surrendered to pressure from the powerful Jain community in the state. But Madhya Pradesh, of course, is not the only state that is saying no to eggs for the Anganwadi scheme and also for the midday meal schemes. In fact, in many places, cultural and religious sentiments are cited to keep eggs out, whereas food activists and people really concerned about the nutrition and the nourishment of children are making the point that you cannot choose sentiment over health. You cannot choose sentiment over science. Is this debate over eggs in both midday meal schemes and Anganwadis a healthy or an unnecessary debate? It's a debate that should matter when we look at the figure and remind ourselves that one third of the world's malnourished children live in India. So is Madhya Pradesh setting a bad example? Let's introduce our panel this evening. Joining us from the BJP, we're joined by its senior leader, Sudhanshu Trivedi. Also joining us from the Congress is Sanjay Jha, spokesperson of the party. From Bangalore tonight, we're joined by Mohan Das Pai. He's, of course, a well-known industrialist and chairman of the Manipal Global Education Services. But tonight speaks also with his experience on the founding board of Akshay Patra, which is very involved in midday meal schemes. From Mumbai today, we're also joined by Purva Joshipura. She's, of course, an animal rights activist speaking up against cruelty to animals, the CEO of PETA India. With me in the studio, Ritika Khera, Associate Professor Economics with IIT Delhi, and also with me, Professor Kancha Elaya, Dalit, well-known scholar with the Osmania University. All right, let me start with you, Sudhanshu Trivedi. It's true that Madhya Pradesh is not the only state. There are other states, Punjab, Himachal Pradesh, Rajasthan, even Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, that have said no for eggs in the Anganwadi scheme. But the question is, on what basis is this no being said? Is the no being said on the basis of sentiment, as a bureaucrat in the Madhya Pradesh government says, or is it being said on the basis of science? Shouldn't the medicinal value of food, especially when it comes to malnourished children, take precedence over sentiment?
It is having both the aspect. If you go by science, it is the assumption that the egg contains maximum protein. But there are certain findings which say soybean is having much more protein than egg. Second thing, if you go by the scientific logic further, which protein is most absorbed in the body? The established fact is the milk and milk related protein are the most absorbed in the body, and the rest of the protein, though intake is visible in the quantity, but it is not that much absorbed in the body. If I ask you one question, which is the most complete, comprehensive food for any children? The absolute scientific answer is milk. So any product related to milk is more important. Second thing, on the religious sentiment, I would like to ask, if somebody is vegetarian and some is non-vegetarian, do you have the opportunity to segregate and then accordingly decide? Can you force those children who are vegetarian to take the non-vegetarian food on the presumed assumption that it is having more protein.
But
though it is
Sudhanshu
not thoroughly cooked and it is
Trivedi,
more
you're making
absorbed
two
in the body.
contradictory arguments, because the point is, if you believe that egg is not, that science is re-looking at the health value of egg, then that's a different argument to make. But Madhya Pradesh made the argument that this is about sentiment. Now my question to you is, should what undernourished children are eating be decided on the basis of sentiment? That is my question.
No, there are so many vegetarian things which can provide a maximum number of protein. I just ask you one thing. If somebody comes to your house, what do you ask? Would you like to have a tea or coffee? Or you ask, would you like to have a beer or wine? Because it's not that everybody can have tea or coffee, but everybody cannot have wine or beer. So when government is taking a stand, it should be applicable to everybody. There should not be any discrimination. You are talking about the rights of one section, but not the right of the other section. And India, and one more thing, just 40-50 years back, it was said that all nutrients and the proteins and the other things are more in non-vegetarian things. Now most of the things are coming in scientific analysis after 40-50 years that try to be more predominantly vegetarian. Just the herbal medicines which were not there, now people are accepting that the herbal medicines are better.
Sudhanshu ji, we forget that we are talking about children who are malnourished. We must remember that at every moment in this conversation. So while beer and wine may be drinks for leisure or to have a good time, a social drink, whatever, the fact is we are talking about what children who are malnourished need. And I remind our viewers again, 1/3 of the world's malnourished children live in India. 50% of children in Madhya Pradesh are reported to be malnourished. Sanjay Jha, but this is not just BJP versus Congress. There are many states that actually say no to eggs. Uttar Pradesh is a very, very important example of that. So why is the Congress trying to politicize this in the way that you are? This is not conventional politics.
Barkha, I'll agree with you. I don't think there should be any politics behind it, and therefore the fact of the matter is that despite all the nutritional knowledge that Dr. Sudhanshu Trivedi has, he's made a very self-defeating argument, because that's a very point, that if for example you want to give an option, you can actually divide a class and find out those who need eggs and those who won't. It's a very simple classification. It's not very complex science. But what is the truth? The truth is, if you look at the statistics for Madhya Pradesh, 50% of the children are malnourished.
Yes.
Now, you can't have a chief minister, because he's a pure vegetarian, trying to enforce his personal sentiment into the health of the children. If 50% of the children are malnourished, it means that they need animal protein. And eggs happens to be a much more available and a cheaper substitute. Now the truth is that I'm glad you have Kanchan Alai on your program, because he will perhaps justify the exact figures. The figures are that around roughly 70% of the people in rural areas are consumers of non-vegetarian food in different forms. And even in Madhya Pradesh, for that matter, I've been told that 35% of the people are only vegetarians, the rest are non-vegetarians. So this is a classic imposition of food politics. It started with a beef ban in Maharashtra.
Okay, hang on.
This is a subtle, it's got a cultural,
but
political,
Sanjay, just be a little careful. Sanjay, just be a little careful. 1 minute, Mohandas Pai. Sanjay, let's be a little careful before you say it's an extension of the beef ban, because as I said, this is not happening in just BJP states. So we've got to be careful to not lose sight of our complexity on this issue. This is not a BJP-driven argument alone. I gave you the example of Uttar Pradesh. There are states in the northeast, Arunachal, Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, Nagaland, where egg is not included in the anganwadi programs. Mohandas Pai, I'll come to you in just a second, but Ritika Khera is somebody who has long been associated with the Right to Food program and as a professor at IIT. Why is this an important debate? Is this food politics or is this something else?
Sadly, I do think there is an element of politics, because I think it's very clear that eggs are nutritionally amongst the best sources, not just of protein actually, but also of iron, calcium, vitamin A. And like Mr. Trivedi said, if they think milk is so good for children, why don't they at least give milk to children? So it's really about the nutritive content of the food that is provided both in the ICDS and
But does the
midday meal.
science keep changing on this? For example, a number of people now believe in giving up dairy altogether. There are people who are vegan. There are people who are severely allergic to milk even, which was once considered. I mean, I was brought up on soya milk. For example, I was born with an allergy to milk. So my question isn't science constantly changing? Do we have to be locked into one idea of what undernourished children need to eat?
That's right. No, so it's true that, the science keeps changing, but no one has refuted the fact that eggs are superior in terms of nutrition. The second thing is, as far as this concern about vegetarianism is nobody is imposing that on any child. And, lots of states are giving eggs and not imposing it on the vegetarian kids. So the segregation point is very easy.
So you're saying the option exists, that anyone who doesn't want to eat it, but the option should exist for those who want to eat it.
And for the vegetarians, there should be milk and there should be bananas and there should be soya.
Mohandas Pai, you've heard the two political parties. Do you see this as similar to the debate around the beef ban?
Barka, we should not politicize all this, Barka. My state of Karnataka has got a Congress chief minister, and I want to tell Sanjay Jaja that he's a non-vegetarian. There was a debate about a couple of years ago, and they all agreed that they'll give milk instead of an egg, because there was too much of opposition to giving an egg and they're giving milk.
No, but Karnataka, but Mr. Pai, no, 1 minute. Karnataka does, according to the food map in front of me, Karnataka does give 3 eggs. There was a time when it did not.
And
there was a time when it did not, and I think...
and that was during the BJP time.
So Mr. Pai, your state does give eggs in the Anganwadi program. Yes.
Barka, we feed 500,000 children.
No, what you are right about, I'll tell you what Mr. Pai is right about. There are no eggs in the midday meal schemes, Mohandas Pai, you're right about that. But there are eggs in the Anganwadi scheme. So these are two different schemes. Now please make your point, Mr. Pai.
Yes. No, midday meal and Anganwadi is almost the same. I don't see a difference between them because you're feeding children. Some are small, some are big. And the government took a view. So let's not politicize this.
Okay.
Now the key issue is, are children getting enough nutrients as required for them? Now there are vegetarian nutrients, there are eggs, they can be given non-vegetarian. There's demand for some people to be given non-vegetarian. The government has taken a considered decision to make sure they get it. And we should not politicize everything. There is no data to say only egg will do, soya will do, many lentils will do, many other things.
So why not give the option? Why not give the option?
Hang on.
Why not give the option?
I'll tell you the option. I will tell you the option.
Yeah.
See, in the government school, there's a very big issue of segregation. Everybody sits together and eat, and all the castes miss. In Mathura, when we went to feed about thousands of children, we found children sitting apart because they're sitting on base of caste. We have to bring them together, and to bring them together took a lot of effort. Now again, you create segregation of everybody, caste and differences will come. So we got to find commonality for people and bring them together and not try to segregate. There are other social issues.
Okay. Now, before I get Purva and Kancha, quick rebuttal to Mohandas Pai, Ritika.
Yeah, so I think the fact that the ICDS gives eggs is very, very important in Karnataka because that is the window of opportunity as far as
But it doesn't in the midday meal scheme.
Yes,
I
so
have
let
the
me
maps
explain.
in front of me, and there is no eggs in Karnataka in school midday meal schemes. There is no eggs in Karnataka in the Anganwadi, even in a state like Jammu and Kashmir, which is Muslim majority, it gives in midday meal. So we're seeing different states approach this differently.
Can I quickly
So why the focus only on Madhya Pradesh?
Yeah.
No, I'm not focusing on Madhya Pradesh. I want eggs to be introduced and other nutritious food to be introduced.
Okay.
In Karnataka, the Akshay Patra Foundation is not involved in the ICDS program, and their eggs are served. They serve to 5 lakh children. They give to 5 lakh children out of 50 lakh children in the midday meal program. And under the BJP rule in the previous government, when this egg proposal came, there was a fight or an argument between 2 BJP leaders and some religious leaders, and that's why the egg proposal had to be shelved.
But there is also the UP, the heartland, where there are no eggs at all.
That's a cost issue.
Now, that's a cost issue, you say. There are others who may say it's... Now, the point is, my question is, in a multicultural country like India, should we not leave it to the states to decide what kids should be eating, or should there be a kind of uniform rule? Mr. Pai is agreeing with me, leave it to the states. Let me get a perspective from Kancha first, and then Purva, and then we'll take it back to BJP and Congress. Kancha, cultural differences, should they not be respected?
No, Barka, you have to look at this in the larger context of BJP's understanding of food culture of people. They are banning various food items in different states, beef in Maharashtra and other states. Now they have brought to the whole issue to the children's life. Now take for example in the case of Madhya Pradesh itself. Now whether the chief minister is vegetarian or not, it is his choice, that is a different question.
Yes.
Now in a situation of such a malnutrition, is it not right to give both egg and milk as well?
Okay.
Now, if you define that children should be given both egg and milk,
Yes.
what do they do? Do they do that, you can't divide, you can't ask the children that, whether you are egg eater or not, therefore you cannot give them. What is this?
Okay.
See, if the party spokesperson is defending the whole question of protein, what goes into the body properly, then the whole world should be wrong. The whole world does not talk about food culture like this. Children will have to eat eggs.
Let me get an apolitical.
Why are they doing this?
Purva, you're not with any party, but you may have a different view on this debate. Purva, go ahead.
Well, eggs are absolutely bad for the human body.
Bad.
Studies now show that they're
saying they're
absolutely
bad.
bad for the human body. Absolutely. One egg contains more cholesterol than the human body needs. Studies now show that consumption of eggs increases the risk of cardiovascular disease by 20%, colon cancer by 5 times the amount, diabetes risk by up to almost 70%, prostate cancer risk by
What
nearly 80%.
about undernourished children who are short on
10%.
proteins, not
They are
well-fed,
the ones
not
who
well-fed
absolute-
urbanites whose cholesterol is already higher, Purva? We're talking about children who have a
Absolutely.
protein deficiency.
Absolutely, and they're the ones who need the best nutrition the most. One egg only contains 6 grams of protein, but 1 cup of dal contains nearly 3 times as much.
Ritika,
And,
quick. Ritika has a completely different perspective, and then we go back to Sudhanshu and Sanjay.
Per
You're
rupee.
comparing a banana.
Yeah,
Let's
no.
bring up that plate, please, the graphic. A banana with an egg.
Yeah, so I'm comparing a banana with an egg, but even if you compare eggs with dals, per rupee, the amount of protein that you get is equivalent. I did that calculation, it's not on the graph.
Yeah,
but there are all these other nutrients which come from eggs, iodine.
It is on your screen.
Yeah, so iodine, vitamin A, calcium, all these things are in a larger quantity, and only 10% of children in the 6 to 24 age group consumed an egg on the day before the survey was conducted in the National
But you
Family
must
Health
answer,
Survey.
Purva, that science is changing. There are now question marks over whether this is the only way to provide those proteins.
Yes, I'm not aware of this study, but there are only 10% children who consume eggs. They are not the super rich that perhaps who are over consuming some of these commodities.
I'm actually, Kancha Elia, you're wanting to speak? Kancha Elia?
No, what I am saying is that when the whole world and doctors are saying that it is good for all children to eat egg, how can you define children's food also in terms of religion? In terms of, caste.
But that was not the
Who is
argument
doing
made.
that?
Okay, that was not the argument. That was not the argument. Right now we're discussing just the
Very
head.
perverse argument.
Now, it is true that Brahmins of India don't eat. What about
But it's an
tribals?
important
What
Again, he
about
goes on
Dalits?
caste, Barka. What has caste got to do with
Who
this?
love that food?
Okay, let the other people
Who
speak
love
now.
that food?
Let the other people speak. Sudhanshu Trivedi, I think if Madhya Pradesh government had made an argument like Purva is making, we don't agree with the nutritional value, maybe more people would have been willing to debate it. Was the problem that the Chief Minister's office described it as a decision based on sentiment? Sudhanshu ji.
Actually, there are two aspects. First, I would like to request all the persons that respect the evolution of science. Science is evolving, so many things are coming in every decade. For example, nutritional value is one aspect. Up till now, the Western science has no concept of which food is to be taken in which weather, which is elaborated in Indian system. There is no concept of the tasir, garam hai ya thandi hai, which is nowhere, anywhere in the world. So, in my opinion, have patience, and I'd like to give an amusing logic.
Yes.
Which animal is considered as the symbol of power and strength and health? It is horse. The horsepower word is there. Horse is not a non-vegetarian. Then the other is elephant. It is also non-vegetarian, pure vegetarian animal. And even the oxen, bull, They are also pure vegetarians.
No, so
It
what
can
is
be a
your point,
debatable aspect
Sudhanshu
that the science
What
come
is
for
your
another
point?
50, 100 years, that what is there to be the nutritional value and other things.
Okay. Sanjay Jha.
And one more interesting point I would like to say.
Yes.
The Gama Pahalwan is also pure vegetarian. And one more thing I would like to say.
Yes.
Whenever you want to imply over the children, it should be uniform. Like their uniform dress. You cannot allow anybody to have a velvet dress, another to have an inferior dress. So anything which is equally applicable to everybody, that should be applicable.
Okay, now
how you can say that a person
Sanjay
should have a separate choice on separate type of meal,
okay, let's
then
Sanjay
it
respond
become
to
a
what you
menu
said.
card and then they
Let
will...
Sanjay respond to what you've said. Sanjay, you know,
Yeah,
Kancha is... 1 minute. Kancha Alai is also making the point that this is an extension of the beef ban, the same point you made. But neither of you is answering what I am bringing up. I have the table in front of me. There are many non-BJP states who also follow exactly this model. And, you know, we haven't spoken of the Northeast, Arunachal, Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, Nagaland. There is Himachal Pradesh, which has sometimes been Congress, sometimes been BJP. There is Punjab, which is otherwise a meat-eating state. There is Jammu and Kashmir. Now, it could be costs, it could be cultural. There's UP. Why are you all going on insisting this is like the beef ban? Sanjay?
Barkha, in a very succinct way, let me just tell you that I don't know the history of each and every state, but yes, there could be financial parameters responsible for not allocating eggs in the midday schemes or the anganwadi schemes.
Yes.
But you know where the BJP is concerned, the reason why I think this is causing a lot of alarm is because there's a very orchestrated and a very systematic attempt to try and influence and bring in, you know, what I call is the whole element of the cultural word is being abused left, right and center. And I believe that is something that we can't and we should not ignore. Because end of day, here's a chief minister who's gone on record to say, I'm a vegetarian and children should not have it. Now that is an irrational explanation because end of day malnourishment has got to do with less of protein. And you want to substitute that with meat, they will not allow it. Nuts are expensive, they don't provide milk. And how does it help?
Mohandas Pai, do you think Madhya Pradesh should have made a more Mohandas Pai, do you think Madhya Pradesh should have made a more scientific argument, even if they disagreed with egg as a source of protein, than making a sentimental one, Mr. Pai?
Barka, sentiment is the reality in human life, okay? You don't want people taking the children away from schools. You want them to stay in schools. You got to find a consensus. Look at Karnataka. Sanjay is making a big cry about Madhya Pradesh. He's playing politics as usual. Karnataka is a Congress state. Our chief minister is a non-vegetarian. He understands. He debated. Now he said, let us give milk. So there is a consensus. Now let's not politicize everything. Let us look at how do we get nutrition to our children, what is the best way, what the maximum number. I think it's becoming ridiculous in the national debate.
Twisting an issue. So, now listen, I think you were wrong when you said that you can't give options. And Barkha, that is the point you need to ask Pai. That why can't you simply give an option?
Why don't you go to villages and feed children and see what actually happens?
You made it appear as if it's a humongous challenge. How is it a humongous challenge? Now, how is it a practical difficulty?
Oh, come on, Sanjay. Why don't you do a program and then talk, Sanjay? Don't sit in a conference room in AC and make loud protestations for which you have no competence.
Okay,
now, I thought that applies to you. Mohandas Pai, I thought that applies to you. You're the AC man.
I run a program, okay? We feed 1.4 million children in 10 states. So please don't open your mouth and talk anything you want.
Mr. Pai, my question is this.
Well,
can the option... Now, 1 minute.
Yes.
I'm asking, Mr. Pai, Sanjay, I'm asking the question you've raised. Mr. Pai, the question is, can children simply not be given the choice? Because in many states, for example, vegetarians do have a choice to take fruit instead of egg. So that gives the provision for children who want to eat eggs to do so. That's the question. No one is saying you thrust eggs down children who do not want to eat them. Yes, Mr. Pai. Yes, Mr. Pai. Yes.
Barkha, if in the state the political leaders find they can have a consensus, they can do all this, it's perfectly fine.
Yes.
If they find that people are resisting, that too much of difficulty, they should not do it. They should not do anything to drive away children from school. It has to be handled very sensitively based upon consensus and what people want. It's a long process.
Okay. Now, Purva, let me get a thought from you. On the one hand, you have this whole cultural and political debate. On the other hand, from your point of view, it's a completely different debate. Purva.
Well, yes, I mean, we care about both issues, health as well as animal protection. And chickens are used for eggs are in fact the most abused animals on the planet. They are made to live their entire lives in the space that's less than the size of an A4 sheet of paper. They have their beaks cut off with a hot blade. instead of giving them more space to prevent them from peck each other in frustration. And at the end of this miserable life, they're killed, often in full view of each other, with dull knives.
Yes.
So it's important to teach children about eating good, healthy, plant-based foods, and it's also important to teach them that compassion and kindness matters.
Kancha Ilaiah, the point being made is there are reasons other than religion and culture that activists are divided. There's a division even on this panel.
Barka, see, if this animal rights argument is right,
Yes.
if nobody should eat egg, then why should they take care of the birds at all? Who will take care of the birds? If nobody should eat chicken, if nobody should eat egg, who will nurture these birds? Only animal rights activists will nurture the birds, or what? And if, if there are no cows in the country today, there will not be cows. Why will farmers grow cows now? See,
By
this
this
kind
logic,
of argument is
where all snakes and
anti-human.
other scorpios
By
go,
nature, human being is a,
nature takes care itself.
human being is a both vegetarian and not vegetarian.
Okay.
Let them have what they want.
Let them choose.
It
Sudhanshu
is
Trivedi.
the food culture of the child is
Yes.
trained by the parent.
Yes.
It doesn't come by for the children
Okay.
from the mouth of the
Sudhanshu Trivedi,
stomach
Sudhanshu-
of the mother itself. What is this? This is absolutely casteist.
And Barkha, 70% of Indians are non-vegetarians. 70%, that's from the National Institute of Nutrition.
No,
It's an official data.
No, it's true. He's right.
No,
No,
that's
more
totally
than
wrong.
No, I don't
Actually.
agree to what Mr. Sanjay Jha is saying.
Mr. Mohan Das Pai,
He's
please
right
don't
on that.
concoct data.
Well,
These
even-
are from the National Institute of Nutrition. I can
Totally
post it to
wrong,
you on your
totally wrong.
personal email ID. Give it to me.
Okay. Sudhanshu Trivedi.
What is the big deal
Look
in
at the meat
serving an
consumption
egg
in the
in the
state.
school?
Yeah. What is the big
The
deal?
problem with
I think the question
Dr.
is Sudhanshu
Kancha Ilaiah
Trivedi.
is he
Sudhanshu.
tries to bring caste in every aspect. I just want to ask him how many Dalits are financially sound enough
No, but,
to afford the non-vegetarian food.
No, but
If you go by
majority
the
of the
cost, I don't
Brahmins
think
are
there is
vegetarians.
any basis of bringing caste in
Do
this
you
logic.
not know that? Majority of the Brahmins are vegetarians. All Dalits are non-vegetarians. Is there no caste there?
Sudhanshu, quick response. I'm taking last comments from everybody
No.
now. Sudhanshu.
I just asked one question.
Yes.
Vegetarian food is costly or non-vegetarian is costly? How many Dalits can afford non-vegetarian food? I
No, do you
totally
mean to
disagree
say
to
that
what
they-
Dr.
they don't
Kancha
do
Ilaiah is saying.
vegetarian?
In my opinion, most of the Dalits are
They enjoy
vegetarian.
it. Their
It is
And
their
all
own
the
life
great
story.
leaders of this country, most of the great leaders of this country were predominantly vegetarian.
Okay.
Whether it
Maintain
was
their
Mahatma
own
Gandhi
life story.
Okay, can
or
we
anybody
discuss the
else.
issue?
Will
I
not
think the
survive
issue.
in this country.
1 minute.
You don't know
I
that.
think
So
the
this is
issue
an
is.
unnecessary debate which
See,
is
the
trying to
market-
bring.
Okay. Now, Sudhanshu Trivedi, should sentiment have been the reason cited for a government decision on a program for malnourished children? Should sentiment have been the reason? I just ask you that again.
Governments cannot
No,
have
if-
sentiment.
Sudhanshu.
No, it's not. Why not? Why not? Even if this is sentiment, why not? It should be respected.
Okay.
You respect in every aspect the
But there's no
sentiment,
force.
but
Okay,
not in
Ritika,
this.
Ritika,
And
last
I would
thought.
like to ask Kancha Ilaiah ji.
Yes.
Raidas ji, Sant Raidas,
What is-
was
what
he
is this?
not vegetarian?
No.
Valmiki
You see,
was he
it's not about
non-vegetarian?
who's
All the
vegetarian
great
and who's
saints,
non-vegetarian.
Sant
He's
Thiruvalluvar,
just diverting
all the
the
great
issue.
Dalit
Okay, I'm out of
saints
time.
were
Ritika, just wrap this up.
So this is
Ritika,
an
what's
absolute
important for
logic.
children?
Logic.
May I please, Ritika.
On the
Ritika.
caste angle.
So I think the Congress party cannot take the high ground on this issue. If they had introduced eggs in Himachal Pradesh, it would have been, something they could have said. In Karnataka, it has to be said that in Gulbarga division, they have introduced eggs
But what's
because
the big picture? Why is this an important debate?
the big picture is that only 10% of children have consumed eggs. They are poor. They cannot afford it themselves. They love eggs, and that's why
And
the
are there
government.
no alternatives? If fruits can be an alternative.
There are plenty of alternatives, but eggs cannot be diluted like milk can. It is not perishable, and therefore there are many logistical reasons also for introducing
Okay, I'll give
eggs.
30 seconds to Mohandas Pai and then we have to end. Mohandas Pai.
Barka, every child should get adequate nutrition, and two, when they decide upon the type of nutrition, they must make sure that people don't resist the restriction and must be done as per sentiment or consensus or whatever it is, and nobody should trust their views subject to children getting adequate nutrition.
All right, the debate remains around not just the nutritional value of the egg, but also the right of the poor especially, to make a choice for their children. So we leave it there. Ritika Khera, Kancha Elaiya, Sudhanshu Trivedi, Sanjay Jha, Purva Joshipura and Mohandas Pai, of course. Pleasure to have you on the Buck Stops here. We'll be taking a quick break. Our newsmaker up next, Piyush Goyal, and he's taking on P. Chidambaram and calling him ignorant. Find out why on the other side. There have been questions raised by the opposition, for example, the former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram, who's asking you a basic question. He's saying, who is paying these humongous amounts to the central and state governments? Will the cost eventually have to be borne by the consumer, suggesting that eventually these companies who are bidding will have to go to the bank for loans?
I'm amazed at the ignorance of the former Finance Minister. I think the auctions were absolutely loud and clear in their intention to actually reduce power tariffs.
He's often been described as one of the most energetic and dynamic ministers in the government. And as we continue to analyze 1 year of the Narendra Modi government, we're joined now by the Minister for Power, Coal and Renewable Energy. As I said, someone who's been described as a doer. Piyush Goyal is joining us on the program this evening. Welcome to the Buck Stops here, Mr. Goyal. Let me start by asking you to briefly identify what you would call your ministry's singular biggest achievement. What gives you the most satisfaction?
I think the biggest satisfaction is that the world today believes the power sector is back on track. Over the years, people had lost hope on this sector. There were problems with fuel, both coal and gas. There were problems with transmission and distribution. There was absolutely no great deal of focus on renewable energy. In all sectors, we have achieved historic performance in terms of actual outputs in the last 1 year, more particularly in 10 months of that year when we were in power. And we have brought back an excitement to invest in this sector. Today, as we speak, all the agony of power shortages, power outages, lack of coal in power plants are all a thing of the past. I've written to state governments asking them to buy more power. I've written to state governments if they need more coal, we can supply it.
Yeah.
It's a sector which is rolling as we speak.
I'm glad you've brought up the issue of states and how they need to buy the power. And I bring this up, Piyush Goyal, because it's the peak of summer. And there are still places and people across the country that are reeling from enforced power cuts. Now, these cuts are not taking place because there's a shortage of power. In fact, there's a surplus of power, as you have repeatedly said yourself. And I want to read out to you two statements that you made. On the 29th of April, you found that there was so much surplus power at 3:30 p.m. in the day that power was actually available at what you call 0 rupee per unit. The next day, you told Parliament that despite this surplus power, the sad part is the states are not acquiring or buying power. The question then is, Mr. Goyal, despite this surplus power, despite the fact that there's cheap power available, if the states are not buying, if the discoms are in the red, how does it benefit the consumer? How does it benefit you and me sitting at home reeling from these power cuts?
Barka, you need to separate the two questions, the states buying power and the discoms in the red. As regards the states buying power, they have to provide for adequate power to serve the people of their state.
So why are they not
farmers
buying?
need
Why
power to get adequate water.
Why are the states not buying?
So some of the states, well, it's not that all states are not buying. So today Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, all of these are states which have sufficient power.
These are all
they are buying
coincidentally
power
BJP
as and when
states.
they need it.
Sir, these are all coincidentally
But that's the
BJP
states which
ruled
are
states.
Barka, they are the states who are serving the people and therefore the people keep voting them back in. The sad part is that states which are not buying power either are not concerned about the service that they need to give to their farmers, to their poor people, the people in the villages. Alternately, some of the state discoms haven't been doing too well. Take the case of Rajasthan, for example. Vasundhara Raje ji became Chief Minister in 2013. She was out of power for 5 years. In 2008, she left behind a robust electric infrastructure where power was being given to all. Farmers were getting adequate power and the discoms were in good shape. In 5 years, the Congress accumulated nearly 70,000 crores of losses. at a run rate when she came into government of nearly 14,000 crores. Now imagine the agony of that state, which is rampant with power cuts, power theft, transmission distribution losses, and she has to struggle now to once again bring the sector back to good health. Fortunately, the central government and the state of Rajasthan are working in tandem. Power cuts this year are far less than what she had inherited.
Yeah.
Going forward, we've drawn up a roadmap how we'll take that state to 24/7 power. We are working to a plan to improve efficiency of the DISCOM, bring down interest costs, reduce or eliminate power theft, bring in energy efficiency to reduce the requirements of power, separate the transmission grid so that there's a separate line for the farmers and they get adequate and timely power, and power is not misused in that line.
Am I hearing you suggest that the non-BJP states are deliberately not purchasing power, are deliberately keeping their people suffering from power cuts?
I don't necessarily need to allege anything at this stage, but I'm sure the people, for example, of Uttar Pradesh or the people of Bihar would like to ask their state governments, why are you not buying enough power when it is available? Why are you not producing more power in your thermal stations where there is huge amount of stock of coal, and the government and Coal India is saying we can send you more coal should you desire. So I would think the people of those states, people of states which are reeling with power outages, should demand from their state governments accountability for not giving them power.
Mr. Goyal, the argument has also been made that when cheap power goes back to the grid and it is available at, let's say, less than 1 rupee per unit, how does that benefit the consumer when the DISCOMs are not willing to put their money, in a sense, backing this cheap power? The argument has been made that only big industrial houses are benefiting. The consumer is not benefiting even though this cheap power is available. So if there are no buyers, how is this benefiting the consumer?
Well, Barkha, one thing I can assure you that Prime Minister Modi's government, no big industrial house can benefit. After all, if we have been able to bring down the power tariffs in the power exchange to less than 50%, I think it's the big industrialists who are suffering. I was asked this question yesterday by somebody, why are bottom lines down? I said, well, we brought efficiency into the system, we brought honesty and transparency. And if that was the cause of FT bottom line, then we are happy it is down. So our approach is that every action that we do, we keep the last man at the bottom of the pyramid as our focus. I believe these DISCOMs can be set right with efficiency improvement. They can be set right with a little bit of effort from the state governments. We on our part from the center are happy to support all such initiatives. We are putting in over 100,000 crores through Deen Dayal Upadhyay, Gram Jyoti Yojana and IPDS to support the state's efforts. We are happy to look at supporting them in terms of energy efficiency devices like LED street lights, LED bulbs in the homes. Renewable energy can be a sustainable source of power in the long run, which can have microgrids, off-grid solutions, which can have rooftops. There are so many ways by which we can help these states. We can expand the transmission grid in their states if they help us with right-of-way and land. All of this is possible. Every state which comes to the center receives full support from the Modi government. It is theirs for the asking.
Now, you spoke about honesty and transparency, and obviously one of the things that your ministry has overseen are the auctions in the coal sector. And while there is no doubt, Mr. Goyal, that this has been acknowledged as a much more transparent method, there have been questions raised by the opposition, for example, the former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram, who's asking you a basic question. He's saying, who is paying these humongous amounts to the central and state governments? Will the cost eventually have to be borne by the consumer, suggesting that eventually these companies who are bidding will have to go to the bank for loans? Their costs are increasing. So once again, it's the consumer that will be paying more for electricity. Now, my question is somewhat different. Do you accept that people of India now have to internalize that perhaps we do have to pay more for electricity? Is the BJP willing to say that the subsidy Raj or the Arvind Kejriwal approach to electricity supply is over, that and a fallout of these coal auctions is that electricity will cost more?
Barkha, I'm amazed at the ignorance of the former finance minister. I would have expected better from you. You are a very avid reader of economics and public policy. I think the auctions were absolutely loud and clear in their intention to actually reduce power tariffs. There was a reverse bidding process for the power producers who were bidding for the coal mines. They were to bid for lower prices in the pass-through of fuel when they generate power and supply power to the discoms. We got very attractive bids who have won these auctions, and the only way is that prices can only come down. There is no provision in the law or in the bidding process that power tariff can ever go up. In fact, it is these same mines which were given free of charge by the UPA government under Finance Minister Chidambaramji, who is supposed to have protected the treasury of the country, the central government, and was responsible to the people to protect national interests and natural resources, who gave away these mines free of charge, then came up with the fancy theory that there is no loss because coal is in the womb of Mother Earth. Yeah. Now the Supreme Court order has also shown that coal was being mined day and night, and nearly 10,000 crore rupees were due from the miners of those coal.
No, there is no disagreement. Sir, there is no disagreement. There is no disagreement that yours was the better, more honest method.
We have charged the corporates, the big corporates whom this party tries to profess as being anti. They were the ones who were pro-corporate, who gave away these mines free. We are the people who are pro-poor people, who brought these mines to serve the eastern states, which are less developed, and also reduce power tariffs for the common man. I think it's very clear who is pro-corporate, the Congress and UPA, who is pro-poor and pro-people, Narendra Modi and the BJP NDA.
And yet Rahul Gandhi keeps saying "Soot boot ki sarkar" to you.
Yeah, but that he can keep saying. There's a Goebbels theory, you can keep trying to say it. Yet your channel rates Prime Minister Modi as having the highest rating that any Prime Minister has had 1 year into office. Yet your channel and everybody else acknowledges he's still by far the most trusted, the most liked and the most admired leader in the country. Yet every opinion poll and survey continues to show that the work done by this government in 1 year is appreciated by the common man. If at all some people are complaining, it's those corporates, those rent seekers who are so used to a cozy government-corporate relationship so that they got freebies from the erstwhile government, which we have stopped.
It's interesting you bring up rent seekers, Mr. Piyush Goyal, because, you know, Naina Lal Kidwai, she made a very interesting statement to our channel. She said that if the Prime Minister can meet with CEOs when he's traveling abroad, why doesn't he meet with corporates at home? So I'm just asking you politically, because I know that you're also a key communications and strategy brains of this government. Do you believe that you're caught in this awkward place where the corporates are unhappy, yet the opposition calls you pro-corporate? So, you know, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. What would you say to Naina Lal Kidwai's argument?
Not at all. The people of India have already told you what they feel about Prime Minister Modi and how much bharosa, how much trust they have on him. Whatever Mr. Gandhi may say today, spoke at Mao, trying to profess some sudden love for, as if he has done some great thing. He has shown his ignorance that it is his family and his government and his party which is the hand behind the failed social welfare programs for the community that Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar wanted to have the upliftment of. He has demonstrated his ignorance, how for years their party kept the poor people and the oppressed and deprived in such a bad state of affairs. So he keeps making statements which don't sell with the people of India. Our work speaks for itself. Now, as far as meeting everybody, I have met Naina Lal Kidwai on ample number of occasions. I have been to every forum in FICCI, CII, ASSOCHAM, PhD Chamber of Commerce, in Mumbai, various chambers, all across the country for that matter. Finance Minister Jetli is talking to everybody. Prime Minister Modi meets delegations when they come to him. Different delegations from corporates in India have met him. I am surprised that Ms. Kidwai has sought to say that, but I wish she would apply or request for an appointment. Prime Minister Modi is always a ear for good ideas, for ideas which can help the poor of India improve their life, for ideas which are towards a corruption-free India, towards a welfare of the common man of India.
You know, I saw you reacting at the BJP headquarters, speaking to the media to what Rahul Gandhi had said on the Ambedkar issue. But he's raising a students' group being de-recognized in the IIT in Chennai. He's saying that even an Ambedkar students' group isn't allowed freedom of speech. So any thoughts on that before we come back to the economy?
Well, at the outset, we did not have any role to play in that. It is an autonomous body. IIT, you are well aware, and your channel has run many stories about the autonomy of IITs. Any decision taken by IIT is an autonomous decision. If he's playing on the fact that that particular group had a particular name to it, I think it's very unfortunate.
Mr. Goyal, I want to...
That is what is divisive politics, Barkha, by the way. Our party believes in Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. We never play this kind of downright low-grade divisive politics. It is the Congress which has been doing it for several years. They are still hoping to continue to do it. I wish them good luck. The people don't believe them anymore. The largest number of MPs from that community are from the BJP today.
And yet, Mr. Goyal, the Prime Minister in his interview to you and I did have a reprimand, a public reprimand for loose talk, including by members of the party and of the Sangh Parivar. So there have been divisive comments that have also come. We can discuss the Congress separately, but by some leaders of the Sangh Parivar, and the PM has acknowledged it. Why does, forget anybody else, the PM has acknowledged it.
Sangh Parivar is an independent organization. We don't decide what they say or don't say. The BJP, there were one or two stray instances which were immediately taken to task and were not repeated. I wish somebody could also tell the leadership of the opposition party, but I suspect there's nobody in that party to speak to their leadership, that they should not try to divide society.
Okay, I want you to come back and speak about the big picture on the economy. And I ask you this because there's a lot of concern today that the monsoon forecast is not looking good. At the same time, you had the RBI governor also join the chief economic advisor in saying that this new way of computing GDP may not exactly reflect an accurate picture. You know, Arvind Subramaniam said this to me in an interview. He said that numbers are puzzling. Mr. Goyal, because you understand this sector so well, what is your sense of these new growth figures? Because, you know, even Sumant Sinha, he made a very interesting comment to NDTV. He said the 7.5% feels like a very ho-hum kind of situation. To be honest, 7.5% is feeling more like 4.5%. This is Sumant Sinha's statement.
Well, he's entitled to his comments. He's a learned person. But as far as I'm concerned, these are statistics that the Central Statistical Organization takes out. In the past, we have had instances where they have gone wrong both upwards and downwards. It happened in the UPA. I believe that's one area which will probably need to be set right very soon so that we can have a more robust mechanism of data collection. It's something in which we will need support from the people and the producing sectors of India, because there is a lag between the data that is given to the statistical organization and when they are giving out this data to the public.
Yeah.
If this lag could be reduced and people become more responsive to give timely data, I think we can have much more accurate figures.
Let me ask you, one of the big things that your government is banking on is the GST, and yet this parliament session you couldn't get it through. Do you believe you'll be able to get it through realistically, given that the opposition may strategize otherwise? And also talk a little bit about this 1% additional tax under the GST that the states will be allowed to levy, that the chief economic advisor himself to the government is questioning.
Well, as regards the passing of the GST, it's not about whether I believe it can be passed. You will have to ask the leader of the opposition in the Rajya Sabha, where they stalled the passage of this bill despite giving an assurance that it will be passed, who stood up in the House, requested that it be sent to a select committee and assured that in the first day of the next session a report will be presented and they will help to pass the GST bill. It's a bill in which there's support across the political spectrum. All the states have finally come on board, which was not happening earlier. All the states, including the Congress states, want it to happen.
Yeah.
They trust Prime Minister Modi. They are happy that for the first time, a government is actually compensating the states, we are also taking the liability of compensating the UPA regime commitments, which they had not fulfilled over so many years. And Finance Minister Jaitley has started compensating states for that loss.
What about the
which
tax?
has only ensured.
What about the 1% additional
Sorry?
tax?
As regards the 1% tax, it's not a compulsory tax. The states have an ability to put that tax if they find that they are losing out on revenue because of their not being a consuming state, and therefore they have the ability to put it. I think the competitive spirit in which states are competing now will ensure that the states remain on a level playing field.
Let me ask you in the end, I want to take you back to the coal auctions, because it is something I know your ministry looks at as one of the big achievements in cleaning up the system. You must have seen some of the editorials that are questioning whether the windfall is actually real-time money, making the point that it's only going to accrue after 30 years, and saying that the government has kind of misled the public in suggesting that there's a 2 lakh crore recovery. So just your thoughts on that as we close.
Barkat, there's always an apple-to-apple comparison. When I say that we increased coal production by 32 million tons this year, we are juxtaposing it to the increase over 4 years of 31 million tons. Right? Yeah. So it took them 4 years to add 31. I added it in 10 months. When we say we increased power generation by 8.4%, it's compared to last year. When we say transmission capacity increased 22,100 circuit kilometers, and it's the highest growth in Indian history, it's compared to what was happening in earlier years. Similarly, the CAG Vinod Rai had highlighted to the people of India in his report that because of the UPA and Congress government largely giving out large quantities of coal mines free of charge, and the process was quite arbitrary and did not have transparency in it, there was a windfall gain of 1,86,000 crores to certain select corporates, which included members of the political party then in power.
Yes.
What we have done is we have carried that same process after the Supreme Court cancelled it through a transparent e-bidding, e-auction. Obviously, the revenue has to be taken on an apple-to-apple basis.
Okay.
Vinod Rai had calculated the 30-year loss. As the coal gets mined, the payment is made. This payment will be made as the coal gets mined year on year. It's not after 30 years. It's every year going forward.
Mr. Goyal, but you know the state bank...
So it's an apple-to-apple comparison.
Got it.
We have exceeded the loss that Vinod Rai had said.
Got it. But in the big...
So the editorials need to relook their facts and figures.
Okay, but you know, the chairwoman of the State Bank of India today said government needs to start spending. One of the challenges before you today is you wanted to keep your fiscal deficit in check, the government is not spending, and the private sector is still being too cautious, not bringing in the money. You know, the business cycle hasn't picked up. That's reflected in the industrial growth figures. That's reflected in even the manufacturing figures. Isn't this putting a question mark on the Make in India promise?
Barka, I'm very happy to inform you that going forward, I'm looking at nearly 100,000 crores, 1 lakh crores of transmission lines being bid out in the next 6 to 8 months. I see a big rollout of the LED program, which will add business to Indian manufacturers. We have a huge technology upgradation happening in Coal India, on the back of which in the first 2 months alone, April and May of 2015, Coal India has increased production by 11.8%. Have you ever heard that before? The so-called laggard at one point of time producing 11.8% more coal in the first 2 months of the year. We are investing heavily in renewable energy, and both private sector and government both are putting in huge amounts in renewable energy. We are setting up 38,000 crores of green energy corridors. So there's so much investment happening, particularly in our sectors, that I see a lot of business coming out, a lot of spending from the government, a lot of interest in the private sector to come into the power sector.
All right, we leave it there. Piyush Goyal, Union Minister and one of the more prominent and articulate faces of this government. Thank you so much. Pleasure to have you on the Buck Stops here today. And that is it on the program tonight. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.